Okay, welcome to Hopeifiers. Hey, I am the acapellist, and with me is the amazing Brother Scott Sweetman. Hey, how you doing, Brother Scott?
Okay, I'm doing great. Yeah, really excited
Excellent.
about seeing you tonight. As you know, of course, and our listeners know, we didn't have a show last week, but it's been, absent makes the heart grow fonder, and I've been excited about getting together tonight. We got a great topic to finish off from our talk last week, so yeah, pretty jacked up. Happy to see you and all the folks out there in internet land. So.
Yes, we're happy to be back. We had some sickness and then some traveling, so we missed a couple of nights there, but we're back to our almost every Thursday routine, trying to spread hope wherever we go, trying to increase your joy and peace and love as you leave us at the end of this half hour.
Oh, brilliant. That's absolutely heartfelt sentiment, acapellist. Yeah, I forgot actually the week before that I was doing the Elephant Man thing, right? I'd had that dental
Yes,
surgery and my face went boom, swell up. Yeah, it was
yes.
crazy. Never had that happen before. So
I hear
yeah,
the
no worries.
documentary crew. I hear the documentary crew just couldn't believe the images they were taking of you when you. No, I'm just teasing. Like,
Yeah, it was almost like that. I was pretty surprised. I don't know if it's because when you get older, your body just doesn't like getting beat around so much. I don't know, but I've had lots of dental work before done and never had that happen. But anyway, like you say, we're
so
back
now,
here tonight.
Scott, remind us when we started 2 weeks ago. This is a continuation of a show from 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
what we
Yeah.
started with, what was our remind me, what was the start of this
It's
one?
the
It was
relationship between hope, resilience, right, and
yeah,
stress or and happiness. So on one side we've got and we explored the relationship between hope, resilience, happiness, and then the other side of that, factors that you know impinge upon us and try their best to snuff hope and those things out of us. And the example that we were using, because a lot of really great studies came out between 2020 and now about the effects of COVID pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, for those of you who don't like to call it the COVID pandemic, when the world went crazy and there was a lot of stress and fear and many things that psychologists and governments and healthcare providers had to deal with. So it's been, I always think that there's a positive in every negative. And this has been a great opportunity for scientists and doctors to look at really under a lot of pressure. And that's we looked at first a British study, and tonight we're looking at a Turkish study. Well, British and Chinese study last week or 2 weeks ago. Tonight we're really looking and focused on a Turkish and American study that was done in 2020.
wow. All right, carry on bravely, Scott.
Okay, so what we talked about last week and sort of agreed upon was that psychology not only deals with mental disorders, but also psychological makeup and balance within individuals, right? So we're all familiar, and TV sensationalizes, my house is big into Korean dramas right now, and there's always and I can never say it properly, but psychopath, which comes out as psychopaths or something in Korean, which I always get a giggle out of. But we're all familiar with the big, depression and antisocial behavior and those things. But more and more psychologists and mental health practitioners are really looking at the day-to-day health, if you will. Like we all have cars, or those of us with cars and trucks in Alberta, which is almost everyone. We have to do daily things, right? We have to keep the oil in it. We have to keep the battery charged. And it's those little things that if you don't take care of can turn into really big things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in the past, maybe psychology has been focused on the big problems and not dealing with them early. And even more so, not really looking into prevention or strengthening healthy mental health. And so, it's like exercise. We don't wait to exercise, hopefully, until, we can't breathe and we're so out of shape we can't get off the couch. That's the wrong time. Well, it's better than not doing it. But, the time is to make sure you've got solid physical health all the time. Mental health is the same, right? Would you agree with that? Do you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And you know what? I just want to kind of jump on your comment about exercise. I've been watching this guy, Dr. Yanni Witten, and he has this pain fix protocol. Yeah, YONIWHITTEN. And he has this pain fix protocol, and really, really logical thing about managing your health, managing your pain, blah, 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 and a lot focused on preventative things you can do, right? But one thing that I love is he talks about kinetic flow. He says kinetic flow is the scientific thing that says this is important for the release of synovial fluid into your joints, to stretch all your ligaments and you build your muscles and all this kind of thing. Kinetic flow. It's movement. It's movement. Kinetic flow is movement, right? But he says basically this is the big key and you've heard other like health professionals talk about motion is lotion, right? If you're moving, you're lubricating, you're making things work well, right? So that's his big thing is that.
That sounds like a song from the 70s, Al.
It does. It does. I might have to work on that. Kinetic flow. Anyway, there you go.
Fluid. Remind me, synovial fluid. I've heard it before. Is that the lubricating fluid inside the joint?
Exactly. And really, it only gets expressed, I guess you're going to say, when you work that joint. Like if you do, like for your hips, let's say, if you do like squats or you move your hip, like use kind of the whole. Well, it's not every joint. If you move the whole range of motion with your joint, you're going to express or release synovial fluid, which lubes things. So the more you move it, the better it feels, the better it moves, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I was watching a documentary about an artist couple in Japan, and when they were in their 20s, they moved up into the mountains and they built their own house. Kind of a ramshackle kind of thing. And they lived up there and they built their own kiln. And the old guy was really obsessive and just like he would make 100 pots a day and destroy 99 of them. And but it was amazing. He was 76 and he moved like he was 40, but he never did everything by hand. I mean, he had an industrial mixer for the beginning of his clay process. But like you say, like he would go walking with his dog and he would run and play. Play was a big part of this guy's life, but I've never seen anyone so agile up in the mountains, right? Like there was like if he fell down, just lay there and die because, there's no way anyone's going to get to him or even know that he's hurt. But yeah, he would play and roll around and do all kind of things with his dog. And it was really amazing to see. And I think that's,
play is super important. I was listening to this program with Gabor Mate the other day where he was talking about his new book, The Myth of Normal. And he says basically all of us have experienced small t trauma. And small t trauma, I might have expressed this already, but it's worth repeating if I haven't said it before.
Absolutely, yeah.
Small t trauma is basically times when we felt unsafe or times when we were prevented from expressing our whole array of emotions, right? We couldn't do that. Or times when we had to really, care and attention didn't come easily or didn't come at all. Like if it was there, there had to be kind of an extreme type of thing to attract the care and attention. But the fourth thing is play. And play that, that if you didn't have the opportunity to play with adults, right, or with older siblings, that is also a trauma, right? That a small t trauma kind of a thing. That's how important play is for us, right? So,
I think, and that ties right in with one of the things the Turkish government identified was that the coping mechanisms or the natural mental health processes were interrupted because, of course, the Turkish government took the tact of most governments who listen to the World Health Organization. They enforce spatial distancing, medical face masks, closing schools, encouraging self-isolation, quarantining, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that they were strongly worried about was how young people would be affected moving forward because they wouldn't have the opportunity for play or interaction or socialization. I know with dogs, we talk about in the dog community, we talk about COVID dogs. And because of all of the things associated with COVID, two things happened. And a huge uptake in the number of people who adopted pets. And the second thing, which was not so good, I'm not sure the first was good necessarily, but the second thing was that there wasn't an opportunity to socialize dogs in the way that dogs need to be socialized to be safe and to be healthy. And now, of course, and if you're not a dog lover, you might say, who cares? But all animals suffer psychological stress the same way we do. Psychologists use animals to help them figure out the human condition. And we see a lot of COVID dogs that were puppies during the COVID crisis and weren't socialized in an appropriate way or enough, and they have psychological problems. They're more aggressive, they're more insular, they have trouble adjusting to, unknown or unfamiliar circumstances. And as you know, I like big dogs, and I've worked with protection dogs, shepherds, Rottweilers, Malinois. We have an Akita now, and socialization is a safety feature in those dogs. Like, you really want them to be socialized so that they're comfortable around strangers, and people have really had to work on that. So we see that in animals, but we also see it in young people. And I know the Turkish government identified it in this study. I know there's been, educators here in Canada and North America have been very concerned. Parents, a lot of the demonstrations that we saw go on, there was a large component of parents that were really worried about their children more than anything. And getting that exposure that we needed to be healthy. So play and exposure. Play allows us, I think, there was he Norwegian? I don't know, but I remember he did a documentary, and he was in his late 70s, and he had an obstacle course in his yard, and he did an hour to 2 hours of play a day. And, jumping and running and rolling and balancing and doing all kinds of things, which normally a man of his age would be worried about breaking a hip or whatever. Yeah. But he was in fantastic physical and mental health, and he was really a proponent for play. And he said part of the problem with modern society is that, like you say, the myth of normal, that it's not normal for an adult to play, right? Like somehow that something we have to leave behind us. And he was saying that's a huge mistake, both in terms of physical and mental health. And I think he was onto something.
I think so too. Yeah. Smart man. I think he had shit figured out. Yeah.
Yeah. But you and I like to play. Sport shooting is something we get out there, and we get to move, and we get to challenge ourselves. And but it doesn't have to be that organized, right? Play can be spontaneous and fun.
Definitely.
As long as it's moving. It's like you and music, and this is one of the things I absolutely love about the persona of the acapellist, is that singing in any form is healthy and good and positive and enjoyable, right?
Definitely. Yeah, it doesn't. That people will say, "Oh, I can't sing." Everybody can sing. Everybody can sing. You just basically find a song that you like the lyrics or it works for you, and change it. Change the song if it doesn't work for you. If it's too high, bring it down. Like change it however you want so you can sing it. It's most important for you to feel as you're expressing it. What the end result comes out doesn't matter. What it sounds like doesn't matter. But you just doing the singing and, man, feeling that vibration in your body, it's incredible. It's a healing process. So yes, everybody.
You'll be proud of it. As you know, I'm scared of singing, but I like to make noise.
Yes.
And I love throat singing. And and I love techno music. And recently there's been a crossover, a fusion of throat singing and techno or rave kind of music, which is really cool. Like, it's got a boom, boom.
All right, I want a sample. I want a throat singing sample. What's it sound like?
Yeah, I actually signed up, and I'm going to start throat singing courses next month. Yeah. Because there's 3 different styles, which blew me away. One of them is really deep, and one of them is really high. And there's one of them that doesn't even sound like human sounds. There's this really cool instructor that's from Nepal and grew up in the throat singing tradition, but then expanded, studied it academically as both an area of academic study and as a musician. And so he
That's
offers
awesome.
he offers online courses, and they're not expensive. He's obviously doing it because he likes it. And I'll publish the information. I'm redoing the links on the site, but hopefully I'll have them done tomorrow. And
That's awesome.
I'll put his link on there. Yeah. And so it's really just hold on here. Hold on, Al.
God, I predict big increases in your health because of your throat singing thing you're going to be learning. I think that's what's going to happen. And is this what throat singing is? Like,
Yeah, well, here, I'm going to play. I'm going to see if you won't be able to see it, I don't think, but I'll put it on here. So just a second. That's the high one. That's just a guy making the sound in his throat.
Really?
Yeah, hold it. Again, throat.
Right.
That's the deeper one. There's actually 3 of them. And this is the techno one. I don't know if you can see my phone.
A little bit.
Yeah. Anyway, so
hey,
yeah, that's kind of cool. So
yeah, that's great. I applaud you, sir. Any singing, any style, everybody can do it. Everybody should do it. It's amazingly healthy for you. Sing by yourself. You don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to go stream it. What kind of crazy bugger would do that? Stream it on Facebook and YouTube and such. You don't have to do that.
It inspired me, and I've been fighting with low blood oxygen, especially when I sleep, and I've started making noises down in my throat and my chest, and I don't know if they're directly related, but my blood oxygen is starting to come up, and I feel that I do feel clearer after all that vibration, like you said, and you inspire. So
I am very proud that, or very grateful, or I'm very happy that I was able to provide some kind of inspiration to you. But I wanted to share one more thing too with you as well. Like, I know you like to make noise, in that as I've started this habit, that I breathe very deep into my belly, into my diaphragm, and then when I exhale as a hum, like.
Yeah, that's almost throat singing there, buddy. Yeah.
And so if I'm watching a Zoom and I feel my energy's going down, or participating in a Zoom, I'll just put my mute on, and that's all. Breathe for a couple minutes, and then come back, put the mute off, and engage again. Right. So
yeah, I love. Have you ever listened to Tibetan prayer?
A little bit.
Yeah, it's very guttural, and it's and it's rhythmic, and they use prayer wheels because the belief is that if you say a prayer once, it has certain power, but if it's repeated thousands of times, it has more power. So they build these kind of like spinning tops with the prayer on them, and then you run along and you spin them all, and so as they're spinning, they're projecting this prayer out into the universe.
Cool.
Yeah, so pretty interesting stuff. But so a little bit off topic, but not really, because that's this big study that was done primarily in Turkey. They looked at individuals aged 18 to 74, and then from 75. Individuals aged 18 to 74 in 75 of the 81 largest cities in Turkey. So pretty big study. And they used industry standard stuff, which was on the website till I took them down just for a moment. They'll be back up. The subjective happiness scale, that's something you can do yourself. The brief resilience scale, you can do yourself. And a couple others which have to be administered, but the 2 big ones are ones that you can do yourself if you're wondered about these things. And they'll be back up on the acapella in the next 48 hours. So getting back to this study, one of the things that they really focus on is resilience. And I had a little problem with understanding what was meant by resilience. How would you interpret that, sort of just the first time you read it? What does resilience mean?
Yeah. So basically, I think it's very close to the ability to respond, right? Response, that you're able to respond, that whatever the challenge is, you can rise to that challenge. That's what, to me, what resilience is.
You're closer than I was. I sort of interpreted it more of as a passive, almost like sort of armor, or something like that, something that was protective. But they use resilience in mental health to mean the speedy recovery and the ability to return to daily functioning after having experienced trauma or stress or negative life events, those types of things. So resilience is very close to what you said in the mental health sense. It's the ability to stay strong during challenging times, is another way that they put it, and recover from those times. So they found during the COVID outbreak that resilience in individuals, and they have a scale to measure this, as I was saying, decreased substantially. And there's a few factors for that they talk about in the study. The
I
length
know
of
one
time.
of them.
What's that?
I know one of the factors for sure is that if you are a person who is experiencing trauma, stress, bad shit happen in your life, a caring adult in your corner, if you have one, makes a huge difference in your ability to respond, your ability to kind of deal with that situation. And so with COVID, like already, especially kiddos were in kind of, they didn't have enough safe caring adults in their lives before COVID. And during COVID, that was way more restricted. So that to me makes the resilience would plummet because of that, because of those emotional supports from a caring adult aren't there.
And further, I agree 100%, Al. And further to that is things that we've seen during other global health events like the Spanish flu and the bubonic plague, is that socioeconomic factors play a huge part in that. So, children in developed countries, wealthier families, had the internet. They could, there was all sorts of camps going on. That wasn't, of course, as good as being there in person, but still there was interaction, there was opportunities, there was still alternatives. But the more financially disadvantaged or socially or economically challenged families or children didn't have those options. They had very few options. They could either break the protocols and put themselves at risk according to the parameters set out by governments, or they could sit alone in a room and read a book or watch TV. That was, even in North America, even very poor families usually have access to the television. It's sort of the opiate of the masses for our age. But you can imagine, what the COVID crazies run 3 years now about, where people were locked down.
Yeah.
And can you imagine, like when I was a kid, I grew up on a farm, we were running and playing and doing stuff and having friends over. And we used to walk, our friends were like 8 miles away. And we used to walk to each other's house and play and then walk home. Like it was just no big deal.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that related to the comments you just made there, Scott. Today I was at City Council when at 1:30 today, and the Shenla Group, the Social Housing Equity Network Lethbridge, was presenting the poverty report for our community. And the poverty report for our community, no big surprises there. It's poverty overall has got less, but it's become more concentrated. And where it has really been is a big impact is on kids, and kids especially of single mom parents, and kids especially of single mom Indigenous parents. Like basically 42% of every Indigenous child you see are living in poverty, and 27% of every child. 27% of the children you see are living in poverty. And if they're Native or Indigenous, 42% are living in poverty. And when you talk about their experience, one, are they getting enough food to have good nutrition so that their developing bodies can grow properly? Are they getting the nutrition that they can focus in school and listen to the teacher and learn stuff, right? Very, very challenging, right? Are they getting the opportunities for recreational social development that other kids have? No. Well, all kids had, like, no kids had proper recreational and social development during COVID, but the kids that are in a poorer household certainly are that's a kind of that's a continuous thing, right? That's always been. And I think that's kind of, I'm hoping to be able to, how can we address that? How can we make, get these kids more supports so that they have more, a better experience growing up, that they have the opportunities, they have different experiences, they try, they get what they need so they can stay healthy and learn and grow, right? So anyways, it's very sad for those kids that are in that circumstance. And we know from a societal standpoint that fixing that makes everything in our society way better, right? Providing care support for kids, right? So yeah, care support, protection.
I remember very distinctly after my parents got divorced, I was 6, my brother was 4, and my mother was quite poor. She didn't come out of it with much. Well, they fought about it until there was no money left. Lawyers got all of it basically. Yeah. And, mom had to work 3 jobs. Now, she was lucky. She wasn't that old. She had me when she was 20. So she was 26 at the time. She was pretty. She was white and educated. I mean, she had high school and some college. So she was able to get work. She worked 3 jobs. So we saw mom, a few hours a day. She worked at night as receptionist at one of the hotels, and she worked in a feed store, and she cleaned dog kennels and stuff at a vet clinic. And, as she said, she was quite fortunate that we were not a visible minority and that we had, some things going, some addiction, I guess, alcoholism, but pretty much on the upside of that situation. And it was really tough there. And I can't imagine,
Sure.
Stacking those other things on top of that. And I know that I was really fortunate in having great grandparents who were very active and took us out and were always in our lives. That was a big, probably saved me from being a drug addict on Skid Row. And 2, mom took us to everything that was free in the city, like swimming lessons. And if it was free at museums, that's where my love of museums and art galleries came from. It was one of the things that, in Red Deer at that time that you could do free. Yeah. And, and it was a type of escapism, right? And because it got you out of that, our little trailer and, mom's not home and we got a crappy babysitter who's, locked in the bedroom with her boyfriend and, whatever. Right. So, yeah, I feel very strongly for the people that have even, I wouldn't say they were disadvantages, but it was quite hard.
For sure.
I remember that we went out once a month to A&W, and that was our treat. And it was a big deal, right? Big deal. And I still look at it fondly. I don't remember those times as being horrible. As an adult now, I can't imagine what my mom was going through. As a kid, it's just the way it was, right? Yeah. And I think that's part of resilience. Children, fortunately, do have an innate resilience to things and psychologically try to make the best out of whatever situation they find themselves in. And often that's why they get abused, because they try to normalize that abuse as love, which is what young people want. So whatever they're getting, they try and make do with that and cope with that. So anyway, in the Turkish study, that was a big concern that they had there. So they wanted to look at what they could do. Like, everything they were being told to do to combat COVID was against good mental health, in their opinion. Like, it maybe was good, maybe not, who knows, for protection against COVID. I personally think that it did stop the spread of lots of things. I mean, it's obvious. We were in the SARS pandemic, and it certainly didn't stop it, but I know for sure it saved lives, because people were following the rules. But so they went about and they looked at it, and the one of the things they found almost immediately was that resilience, individual resilience, was a key factor in mental health. And so if people scored high on the resilience, I forget his medical name, anyway, the resilience test, if they scored high on that, they usually also scored quite well on mental health and their current health of that. And they reported feeling less stressed and less destroyed by the whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
People who scored low on the resilience test, and this is where we're getting into the connection, people who scored low on the resilience test also scored lower on mental health assessments, and they felt worse. They were bearing more weight and more trauma from what was going on around them.
And
And
Scott, did you say the self-assessments for resilience and mental health are on the Acapellas website? Is that what you said? Are going to be
they
there?
were. I was changing the links, so they're
Okay.
right at this moment. But within 48 hours, they will be live, and you can download them for sure. And I'll highlight them on there because it tells you how to take them, and you can take them yourself. Now, maybe I don't want to get flamed by a bunch of psychologists saying, "What are you doing, telling people to evaluate themselves?" But yeah, I think self-evaluation is important, and I think that these tools were designed for self-evaluation. So go nuts, fill your boots.
Awareness, self-awareness, whatever can lead us to better awareness of ourselves and that's a great thing. So cool.
And that's what the Hopeifiers do, right? I mean, that's the acapellist mantra, is that, if you can take action to improve your life or those around you, then do it. What's stopping you, right?
Sure.
And so sharing these things, I think, is really important. So they looked at the resilience of individuals was decreased across the board, right? Looking at pre-COVID tests to during COVID tests. But to the individuals that decreased the most, they had more trouble coping with fear, panic, anxiety, and stress across the board, not just from COVID, but everything bothered them more.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So one of the things that came out of the study was that resilience is a key pin to mental health, to the concepts of mental health. Then I'm quoting now, furthermore, it's been posited by this study that resilience is not only protective in terms of mental health, but also economically and biologically relevant. And so that resilience in a society also not only protects our mental health, but also protects the economy and the biology of that community. And I thought that was really interesting. So, we're, and as we talked about last week, one of the keys for resilience is hope. When they started to unpack what is resilience and what do people who score high have that people who maybe score less don't have, hope was the biggest factor, which doesn't surprise you and I, right? Because hope keeps the world spinning on its axis.
So did you also say then, like, individual resilience kind of factors into community resilience, right? So is that the point you were making there, correct? So the more we can encourage each other individually, the stronger our community gets in terms of its resilience and its overall or its collective type mental health.
And this study supports what you were saying about where you were at City Hall today and what you were listening to, is that they're saying that resilience in a community or a country or whatever has economic and biological benefits beyond mental health. So it's not just, we feel better, but those things also improve the economy. They also improve the bio, what's it called? Bio loading, the stress, the interconnectivity of the biological relationships inside of the community. So it's got a very mental, very physical, very economic role in civilization, in humanity, which is kind of a big thing. When we're looking at what they can do. And so they came out of this saying, hold on here. So you mean that we can come up with something positive that doesn't cost a gazillion dollars and improves not only the individual, but families and communities and our nation? And so Turkey and some of the other countries that were involved in this said, yeah, this is where we need to be putting resources, and this is where we need to be encouraging mental health practitioners, community workers, parents, teachers, politicians, to really be promoting resilience. And at the base of resilience is hope. And that seems like such a simple message, and it shouldn't require a massive study involving dozens of scientists and things. But that's the culture we live in. And I was really amazed that some countries put the energy into this, while other countries put a whole bunch of money into apps and things to lock airports down that didn't seem to work so very well. So yeah, from resilience, they started looking at hope, because hope was one of the main indicators of whether somebody would be resilient or not. Okay. And so they defined hope as the belief that paths to reach one's goals can be found, and the motivation in trying out those different paths. That's what they described hope as, which I thought, hey, that's right in line with what we've been saying.
Read it one more time.
Yeah, it's a little awkward, and I think it's been translated, but I'll quote it. So, hope is a factor in preventing poor mental health. Hope is the belief that the paths to reach one's goals can be found, and the motivation. Sorry?
No, good. Nice. I like that. Carry on.
Yeah, and the motivation in trying out those different paths. Snyder et al. 2002. From this perspective, a hopeful individual, even under challenging life conditions, has the strength to find alternative solutions and apply them. Consequently, hope can be seen as a protective factor in mental well-being in relation to the difficult conditions created by COVID-19 and other trauma, et cetera. So,
cool.
Go ahead.
No, cool. So basically what the connection here is that we're talking is that hope is something that certainly increases resilience, which also increases our mental health individually and collectively, right? That's kind of what this survey is identifying. Yep, great.
Exactly. And this was published in the International Journal of Mental Health and Addiction. So this is not junk science. This is
right. Yeah.
Legit up there. And that's one of the things that we've been talking to each other and our listeners about, is the difference between a hope and a wish, right? That hope, there's a plan. And this is one of the things that's really accented here, is that when you have hope, not only do you believe you can reach the goal, but you're empowered to try different paths. And I think inherent in that is an understanding that some of those paths will be the wrong ones. There will be failure. And this is something that, tying in with a lot of other things we've talked about, is a key factor in hope, is a willingness to fail and not to give up when one path doesn't work.
Right. Yeah.
Because it stresses throughout this study the plural of path. There's not one path, there are paths. And that the individual is willing to try them. That's key.
Right.
And I think that one of the things working against us here is our participation culture. And, that's where we don't let people fail. Because I think failing, as our motto is in SAFE, if you don't win, you learn. And it's okay not to win, because when you don't win, you're learning things that you can then use to try again. It's a scientific process, right? So you try something that fails. What did you learn from that? Okay. What can that tell you about how you should try next? I love watching children. Don't you just love watching children try and solve a problem? They'll try one thing, they'll fall down, and they don't just give up. They try again. They'll drag some other piece of stuff in there, and they'll, go find a friend to help, or con mom or dad into whatever they need to do, or grandpa or grandma or whatever. So hope then has twofold, as you said. It's an underpinning of resilience, which is key, but it also is a protecting factor in its own. So for me, I see that hope is really an important grassroots level. I won't call it a feeling, skill. I would call hope a skill. Do you think it's a skill?
Yeah. Would it be a skill? Would it be a capacity that you develop your capacity for hope? Right? Maybe.
But you can improve it. That's what I was thinking. That's why I called it a skill, right? Like we can say, I'm going to increase my ability to have hope. And you can by trying, when something isn't the way you want it, trying to find solutions and believing that you can. That's the basis of hope, right? So they really found that hope and resilience are protective factors in mental well-being. And so, things like the hygiene, working conditions, social relationships, all of these things forced individuals to not adopt new models of behavior. And the people that had hope found ways to turn this to advantage. And they found ways to cope with the stress. And they found ways to be resilient through the stress. Those that didn't suffered the most from the trauma and the negative impact of those things that were going on. So there's really clear evidence that, as you said, both the individual and then the ripple effect carries on in terms of its protection. Okay, so they found, and this is really interesting, they found that hope motivates the individual into making efforts regarding both the present and the future. And so if you have hope, you're more inclined to make the effort to make things better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool.
And I thought, boy, that really pins it right on the, the button. Because if we have hope, we believe there is a solution, and we believe that we can get to that solution if we try.
Right. And it might not be for one. It might not be the first attempt. Might not be the 10th attempt. Might not be the 20th attempt. But you can get there. Right. You're yes.
Well, and not part of the study, but you and I know from life that sometimes just trying relieves the stress. You feel like you've been empowered. You feel like, you know what? I haven't solved this yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
And, it's like getting my health back after the whole coma thing and everything. Yeah, I still have a long way to go, but I feel so empowered because I am working.
You're working on it. You're making improvements. You're building on. Yeah.
Yeah. And so from all of this, the researchers looked at intervention programs that facilitated hope, decrease psychological symptoms. Okay. And but they found that hope has a negative association with psychological disorders. So if you have hope, it negatively impacts the occurrence of psychological disorders, which is kind of a backwards way to say it, but that's how they worded it. When these findings are taken as a whole, hope can be thought of as playing a protective role that stimulates good mental health and counteracts psychological programs or problems in the individual and the community at large. So happiness and good mental health is subjective, but it can be identified through hope. It can be identified through resilience, and there's tests to test those things. Or you can ask yourself, do I feel hopeful? Right? Do I believe that there's a solution and that I'm empowered to try to find it? Not that I necessarily will, but can I try? Mm-hmm. And that governments, healthcare workers, etc., should be putting more resources into encouraging hope and resilience in individuals rather than waiting until there's psychological disorder and then trying to cure that or mitigate the problems of that. So very much an idea that mental health from trauma or traumatic events can be mitigated early or even before they occur by encouraging hope and resilience in individuals.
Cool. So
Pretty
is
cool.
that our summary for tonight, Scott?
Yeah, I think that we can take away from this, and I encourage people. It's a pretty lengthy read. Let me go down here. The study is, oh goodness.
Will it also be posted on the website?
Yeah, absolutely. 16 pages long. It's
Okay.
not a lot of gobbledygook. It's pretty clear and well written. And there is a lot of good information that people who are maybe looking for a more academic basis for encouraging programs or encouraging people to spend time, resources, and money on resilience and hope. I think of my mom in the lodge she's in the manor, and they're always trying to make the quality of life better. And from this study, I think that one of the things they should be encouraging more is a sense of hope, that people are empowered to solve situations. And now, obviously, you can't undo trauma, right? You can't make things not happen. But through focusing on developing these skills, these abilities, these, what did you call them? You had a great word.
Capacities, I think I used.
Capacities, that's brilliant. Great word. Are an important factor of humanity moving forward. As healthcare gets more expensive, as resources get tighter and tighter, there are options like building hope and resilience that you can do with your children. You can do it at home. You can share with friends, strangers, like we're doing here, that are proven scientific benefits to trauma, negative mental health, and situations where we feel hopeless or like there's no way for us to survive.
So for our viewers, we're saying try and instill more hope in yourself and with anybody around you. As you do, their resilience will increase, their mental health will increase, or if you look at it a different way, mental health disorders will go away or diminish, right? And the more people that we can help get hope, resilience, mental health, the stronger our collective community becomes for that as well, right?
And the great thing about this, Al, is there's no economic buy-in.
Right.
You don't, it doesn't cost you anything. And if you've got disabilities or you've got physical or other restrictions, all that's required of you to become more hopeful is to accept that there are solutions. Now, you may not be able to solve COVID, but you may be able to mitigate the trauma and the stress that it's causing in your life or your family's life. Not just COVID, but everyone's talking about a recession and inflation and all of these things. That hope is empowering, and that's the message that I think ultimately you and I want to share, is that all of us, regardless of the challenges you face as an individual, as a family, as a community, that with hope and resilience, you can make it better. And making it better just might mean suffering less. But the science says that it can and it will lower the mental health problems that we're all experiencing and facing in our lives. So.
All right. Well, that sounds good. We want to help. My phone number is right there. If you want to have a hope-filled conversation with me, give me a call and we'll have a chat. Brother Scott, we're going to get back next week, correct?
Absolutely. And next week
we're going to be on track now. Every week we're going to be back on track now. Maybe. Hopefully.
That's right. And we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to take a different route. We're going to talk about hope and politics. And
okay. Come see us next week for Hope and Politics. Keep yourself well. Anything to close off there, Scott?
You bet. From myself, Scott Sweetman, and my great friend, the acapellist, Alan Friesen, we hope all of you have a hopeful week and bring a little bit of resilience into your life. It'll make you, your family, your community stronger, healthier, and happier. Good night, and see you next week.
Amen.